Hello. Today's recording may include strong language and adult themes, or it may not. We'll have to see. But PG, caveat emptor, and all of that. Hello, and welcome to Comic Cuts, the panel show. My name's Kev F. Sutherland. You might know me as a writer and artist for Beano, Marvel Comics, Oink, Red Dwarf, Viz, Doctor Who, and my graphic novel adaptations of Shakespeare. But then again, you might not. My guests today, talking comics, are Iszi Lawrence and Doug Segal.
Whoop, whoop.
Hello.
I'll make a bigger noise than that.
Woo woo! Hello.
Boop poop.
Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us, so the panel seats a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we've discussed, and we call it Comic Cuts.
You practiced that? I thought it was amazing.
It was measured.
I've been told it's abysmal and a pain to listen to, especially I would imagine for a bass player. Doug, you play the bass.
I do slap at the bass, yes.
You got a new one. You
Absolutely.
showed us photos of it. Was it a Rickenbacker?
It is a Rickenbacker 4003, which has been my dream bass since I was 14 years old.
Where did you get it from?
Amazing. A music shop.
I just wondered whether you might be one of those people who gets it shipped over from America or goes down to Denmark Street.
Oh, I'd love to go to Denmark Street, but there's practically nothing of Denmark Street left anymore. It's all been torn down and built into empty apartments owned by overseas oligarchs.
That's very true. I went last month and I bought some guitar strings just so I could say I'd bought some guitar strings at Denmark Street. But yes,
The
sad.
final hurrah.
I have two guests with me today who brought with them a panel from a comic or something close. We're going to see if we can identify it and talk about it. Maybe we and you will learn something about comics we didn't already know, or maybe we'll just show off a bit and have an enjoyable chat. Let's see. Joining me from, actually, I don't know what part of the country you're in, Iszi Lawrence.
Yes, I'm in Reading, which is suitable for an author, I think.
That works perfectly if we see your voice bubble written down. And Iszi, what should the innocent viewer know about you?
Oh, that I'm a big podcastery, history writery person, and I have read a lot of comic books. I used to grow up, like, this is the truth, right? When I was a kid, my stepdad used to go down the Sunday market and get me old copies of the Beano. So I used to read the Beano from like 1950s and 1960s in the 1990s, which was really sort of like, and I had loads of them, and I was sort of like really kind of, and then my mum threw them all out. But, you know, I did read the old, you know, Roger the Dodger and Dennis the Menace, and before, I think, Walter the Softy, but Walter was called Walter the Softy. I mean, it was really, you know, un-PC. And the Bash Street Kids, there's no girls. It was all boys and that sort of thing. So
Wasn't there a
weird.
token girl? I thought there was a little...
There was later,
Minnie. Yeah.
but not initially. There wasn't.
Really?
Her name's
Yeah.
Toots, so she was hardly
Yeah.
named in the 2010s.
Well, indeed. But she,
My takeaway from the start of your sentence was, I used to grow up.
I did used to grow up. And then I stopped growing up.
Yeah, thought better
About
of it.
9 is when I stopped. But I got bigger still.
You know, it's
So-
really weird you say that because you're not getting bigger because I was just... No, hang on, that's ridiculous. I don't want anyone to think that I've interrupted just to say I got bigger too.
Did you?
But because that's also not true. In the last year, Doug,
Yeah.
I believe you've actually lost an awful lot of weight.
I've lost an entire Iszi Lawrence, I would imagine. I've lost 7 stone.
I'm a bit heavier than that, but bless you.
Are you?
Yeah, massive.
I'm surprised.
And Doug Segal, what part of the world are you in? Norwich?
I'm no near. I'm actually on the borders of Norfolk and Suffolk, in the middle of nowhere. But I'm from East London. As you can tell from my accent, I am genuinely a bona fide Cockney. But when I was getting bigger, I went from speaking like an extra in EastEnders to this because I worked with posh people for a while. But
You
but
still
like,
sound quite common.
good. It's what I'm aspiring to. But like Iszi, I got into comics because my mum would bring me some back from the market, and like you, they were 50s comics, but they were American comics. They'd come over as ballast in merchant ships. Because that's what they did. The ones that had been returned, that hadn't been sold at the stores, they'd bundle them up, and it would just be heavy weights that they could put in the bottom of ships. So they brought them over here and then sold them on like a penny a pack. And so we used to get them really cheap. So I grew up on 4-cent comics were my big thing. The original Captain Marvel. I read all of those, and those must have been early 50s. Wonderful.
See, I wasn't allowed to do any of the superhero ones. My dad's really into Dan Dare, and I'm not allowed to touch any of it. So to this day, I've not been able to read Dan Dare. I've got to wait for him to pass away before I get my mitts on it.
Fella with a big head did it. Big green fella with a big head. It's all his fault.
So Doug is a mind-reading magician. Am I right, Doug?
Wrong. I was just explaining to Izzy. I've given it up. That was the act that I was. Look, we're going to say famous. Let's say famous.
Yes.
There was TV involved. That was the act I was famous for a decade and a half, and I was becoming increasingly disillusioned with it. And I'm kind of, as the kids say, I'm totally over it now. But I'm coming back, and I had my first gig last night. So I was a comedy mind reader. I've exercised the mind reading.
Exorcised, not exercised.
Exorcised, because mind reading is the work of the devil, Izzy, as we know.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Obviously.
That is fantastic. Have you had to sell lots of props then?
I want to sell lots of props. So I've got one prop that's worth the price of a Rickenbacker, which, if anybody knows anything about Rickenbackers, is a lot. And I've been trying to sell it. And the problem is, no magic-y people are working, right? And it's a super high-end prop that only I, Darren Brown, and 2 other people have in this country. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's probably only half a dozen of us that were working at that level to start with. So I'm just hoping one of the other, I can't do the math, 4 or whatever it is that don't have one desperately want to buy one. I cannot. What I would say is it's a prop that you only see. It's like an iceberg. You only see the tip of it. And the tip of it, what I will tell you, it looks like a small locked box which you hang from the flies in the theatre.
Right. Fabulous. Well, if we see a locked box hanging from our flies, we'll know that it used to be owned by Doug.
Yeah.
Izzy, we didn't really find out enough about your amazing podcasts, of which there are so many. I've got here British Museum member cast, Seti Sopo with Simon Dunn, Z-List Deadlist, Terrible Lizards. Have I missed many?
You've missed a couple, but it's fine because they're not going at the moment. So, yes, those are the main ones. Terrible Lizards is starting up again in June 2021, and that is our 4th season of all about dinosaurs. And so if you want to know any dinosaur facts, I'm your lady. I know loads about dinosaurs.
You do Making History on Radio 4, and I'm given to believe something on Netflix.
That's right, Lost Pirate Kingdom, which you can still watch. I am very happy about it because they show a procedure for getting rid of syphilis. And they show a man going through this procedure, and then they show my face after you've seen his genitals, and my face going straight into the penis. And then it cuts back to his penis. And I am very excited by this. I want to make it a family motto. Straight into the penis. I think it's a good one. But yes, so you can catch up if you go to izzy.com, iszi.com. You can find all of my podcasts and my kids' books where there's no penises.
It's very useful that we've practiced the dark art of describing pictures, because what's going to happen is that my 2 guests are going to share an image, possibly a panel from a comic most likely, and we're going to try and guess what it is. Now, you should be able to see these pictures at home or wherever you get your podcasts from. It'll be on my website, comicfestival.co.uk, and on my Twitter, KevFComicArtist. But you shouldn't need to see these pictures because we're going to be so good at summing them up. I think the first image we should see should be that's been brought by Doug. Doug, share a word. I'm looking at it now, and we've got to try and describe it. Izzy, go on, you have a go.
Well, have you ever seen Heston Blumenthal fencing with a blonde lady? Because that's basically, I'm afraid, what she looks like. She looks like imagine, because she's in a position, they're both fencing, they're both wearing white. She, of course, is not wearing the cups that you're meant to wear for fencing. I've done fencing, and you're meant to wear proper squishy booby cups. She's not wearing those squishy booby cups, so that's dangerous. I think they've got foils. Yeah, I think they've just got foils.
Yep.
He's sort of like, she's gone in with a lunge. Her feet are facing the wrong way on one of it, but never mind. He's riposted her, he's parried her away, and she's saying a turd sandwich, so she might be Irish, and into her sandwiches. And then he says, when did you get to be such a potty mouth? So she's not Irish. Did you talk like that back in the homeland?
So maybe she is Irish.
Well, maybe she is. Is that why your handsome prince divorced you? He's got blue eyes, look at that, and a very neat facial hair. And she then says, could be, good lunge, but you let your point drift off target. And she's done. That's her second lunge, and he's basically matrixed her, and he's leaning back. He's also got an earring, which is yes, and it's on his right ear, I believe. There we go. It's very lovely, and they're wearing Adidas shoes.
Wow, you can identify shoes. I'm too old to identify shoes. What I can identify is possibly the vintage of the comics, because that colouring looks 90s to me. Would I be getting close with that, Doug?
No, you're a decade out.
So
2000s.
It's noughties.
Noughties, yeah. This particular panel, so the series ran for they're terrifying 13 years. 150 issues.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't.
Are these
realised.
two famous people in it, or are they like the main characters?
It has a cast of if not thousands, certainly dozens.
Okay.
Dozens.
Well,
and
I can describe further for the listener who can't see the picture that the line drawing style is that you would find in a DC Vertigo comic, maybe even in a Marvel comic, although the colouring is much more DC-like, and that you would have found in the 90s.
To be fair, the artist on the first, I'm going to say 6 or so issues of this, is not the artist that you would normally associate with this series. And this is from the second, maybe first or second issue of the series.
Well, I literally cannot guess what comic this might be.
I know what it's
You were right
not.
with Vertigo, though. You were right with Vertigo.
It's a DC Vertigo book that I'm drawing a blank on. Izzy, would you even hazard a guess at a title?
All I know is it's not Sandman. So there we go. Which is, I don't like I say, I don't tend to read these comic books, so not a clue.
Tell us what we're looking at.
What we're looking at is a very early panel from Fables by Bill Willingham.
Kev looks very excited by that.
But because it was drawn famously by my former studio mate, Mark Buckingham. And I know many of Mark Buckingham's Fable stories because I would get the books for free from Mark and would read and enjoy them greatly and did not see this. Does this character, do both of these characters, is that Snow White?
No, that's Cinderella and that is Bluebeard.
Bluebeard in the books like all the time, and I've seen him like 100 times.
He's just in the first arc, and I don't think Mark drew the first arc at all.
Right,
but it is his. I mean, if you ask me, I was surprised to find that this wasn't Mark when I went to look for it today.
Do they end up sleeping together? That is what all I need to know.
Nah.
Is it darker than that, Doug?
Oh gosh, the whole thing is really dark. Do you know anything about this comic, Izzy?
No, nothing at all.
So the premise of this comic is that hundreds of years ago, all of the inverted commas, because this is a very broad term, let's say the good and the neutral fairy tale characters were driven from their homeworld by a dark adversary who harnessed all the super baddies. And they were banished to our realm, where they set up a clandestine community within New York City called Fabletown, which is protected by spells and glamours so that I'm trying to remember what they call them. They call it the Mundies, mundane people. So the mundane people don't discover them. And the first arc of this is there is a murder.
The Culper ring during the Revolutionary War. Oh,
it's fabulous. In the first arc, there is a murder within the community. It's the murder of Rose Red, who is the sister of Snow White, as she was in the Grimm fairy tales. Snow White is the mayor of Fabletown, and the sheriff of Fabletown is Bigby, which is short for Big Bad Wolf, who is taken human form. It's funny, it's dark, it's moving. There is So there's a horrible incident in Snow White's past that is only hinted. Let's just say her stay with the seven dwarves was neither happy nor consensual.
This was the dark area that I was thinking of with relationships in fables, because the thing that I found with fables is that I wanted immediately to be able to take this into schools when I do my comic classes and say, look what you can do, taking a story and turning it into your own thing. And as soon as I opened up a double-page spread, it was, let us say, inappropriate for year 3. And that is in the nature of fables.
I mean, you've got a lot of dark history surrounding fairy tales in general. I mean, the reason why the Brothers Grimm wrote them was to sort of give this sort of German nationalistic folk story to a group of people by taking basically word-of-mouth tales down, printing them out, basically from women. He basically nicked a load of sort of folklore stories that and tried to sort of build this sort of, because if you remember, before Germany became Germany, it was just a load of different fractured states, and they're sort of trying to build a sort of culture out of it, which they kind of did, and it went a bit wrong after the First World War, as we know, and all of that's fueled sort of by the sort of nationalistic stuff that happened, which included the Brothers Grimm writing these tales. But what I find really interesting is there's a guy from Durham University who did a genetic meta-analysis on fairy tales. So in the way that genes come up in, so for example, we've all got 2 eyes. Most creatures have 2 eyes, and you can see what is most common in all universal creatures having 2 eyes, and they can locate the gene of 2 eyes relating to that particular gene in all creatures. And the thing is, like Snow White's quite a common one, but things like Red Riding Hood, that story is across continents. I mean, it's in Africa, it's in Russia, it's in Europe, it's everywhere, different things. And he had a look to see what were the key components of fairy tales that got remembered and passed down. Was the commonality. And Red Riding Hood, the commonality isn't Red Riding Hood. It isn't like the big bad wolf. It isn't a grandmother being eaten or anything like that. The main commonalities are all the freakiest things that you can find. So in a lot of the stories, the wolf gives Little Red Riding Hood a glass of wine, which turns out to be her grandmother's blood. And it says a lot about the human mind that we just pick out the most gory, freakier stuff. And that's the thing that we then mould the story around in order to try and make sense of it. Because we remember these weird facts and try and make it a whole thing. So, you can't freak anybody out with fairy tales, because the actual truth behind them is the whole purpose of them is that they are freaky by nature. I just find, the stories of the fairy tales and everything else really interesting. And also the fairies themselves, the actual things, freak me out, because they're not the cute Victorian little fluffy things. They're the things which are changelings and take over your mind and have your family killed. So be careful about fairies.
And it was in the Victorian era, wasn't it? The Grimms are in the 19th century, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But
Perrault,
it's when
his 19th century as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically when you've got Europe starting, when nationalism is kicking in, they start to write down all of these myths and all these traditions because they're trying to form some sort of thing that links people. Because nothing really links us. We're all sort of, let's do this because these do that. We don't like the people on the other side of the hill, ha ha ha. And they just try and, turn that into a culture. And they do this by writing things down and being very male about it.
They were literally creating a broadcast medium, because the things that unite us now are broadcast media. The things that unite us post-broadcast media are the internet. And what they were doing, they were trying to do an analogue version of that broadcast media, a unified media. More primitive broadcasting. That's literally broadcasting by handing it from mouth to ear, isn't it? Whereas they were broadcasting it by committing it to paper and then disseminating the paper. And then that then evolves into radio and cinema and then TV and then the internet and now the pinnacle of podcasting.
In the case of these fables and fairy stories that we're talking about, they actually went through very, very high art, because a lot of these are the source material for ballets and operas. And Wagner wouldn't have got on very far if he hadn't had all of the Viking stories to make his own.
Pretty much. What else are you going to do if you're an opera singer? Because, if you're a composer of opera, I mean, what are you going to talk about? Your tax returns?
Yeah. I mean,
you can't do religion. You'll upset people. So you got to do old stories and all the old stories.
The form does require bombast. Do you know what we need? We need superhero operas. Oh God! No one tell Weber.
Don't.
No one tells Zack Snyder, more to the point. In fact, there's a very big comparison, isn't there, with the superhero movies that we're experiencing now and what composers like Wagner were doing 120 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest spectacle that you can do, be it Victorian historical paintings, or be it opera, or be it the big screen versions of the comic books that we were raised on. Certainly Doug and I were raised on as kids. Izzy had moved on to books without pictures.
Well, wait and see. But maybe. But I do find a lot of. I mean, it's quite depressing when you think of some of the masterpieces of composition that went into all the ballet and everything else, and then we've got Benedict Cumberbatch looking like an idiot. There's not. He's got a big collar. He's magic. Okay.
Well, isn't it strange? It's only the passage of time, I think, that confers so much import onto the stories themselves. I mean, the Victorians decided the things to put into their high art were these classical stories. And of course, we know everybody who went to posh school learnt the classics. And yet the stories that you're learning about, whether it's Hercules or the Odyssey, they're just jumped up comic strip stories. They're just some stuff that some folks made up round a campfire, just like the Marvel bullpen.
You don't know.
But 3,000 years ago.
Odysseus might have upset a Cyclops and dressed up as a sheep to try and escape him. You don't know.
It's quite right. It could in fact be reportage.
Exactly.
To bring it back to comics slightly, if I may, we've just been looking at fables adapted from the old fables that we've been examining. And it is a bit of a 21st century thing to revisit those older things in comic form. Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen being a perfect example, taking people who are just out of copyright, in the case of Sherlock Holmes, the Invisible Man and Captain Nemo, and putting them into adventures. Bill Willingham doing a very similar thing with fables and those old characters, about which we found an awful lot to say. I tell you what, Izzy, would you like to unshare Doug's picture and share yours?
That is my comic strip thing. It's not a strip, it's just one thing of it.
Listener at home or wherever you might be, you'll be able to find this picture on my website, comicfestival.co.uk, or on my Twitter, @KevFComicArtist. But you don't need to find the picture because we're about to describe it so beautifully. Doug?
We are looking at a single panel which is a bemused-looking anteater. He has a speech bubble above him with a single exclamation mark in him. He's next to a tree which looks like it's probably a palm tree. There's a very exotic looking red flower, a bit like a passion flower in the foreground. There's some grasses in the background. Stylistically, I don't recognise this, but it feels almost like almost in the style of, say, Tintin or one of those sort of comics. Hergé, is that who drew?
Well, for the benefit of the comic panelologists out there, I would describe this style as ligne claire, which is indeed the Hergé style. I would also say, looking at that composition and that eye and that red flower, there's a open orchid, is it? I don't know, some kind of red flower, so beautifully positioned in the arrangement of foliage. We've got plants near to us, we've got midground with grass, we've got a background with dense foliage, so beautifully composed in line alone, that I would say this would have to actually be Hergé. Is it?
Boom, of course it is. Of course it is.
Both
Correct.
nailed it
Correct.
first time.
Right, and I'll also admit that it is Tintin. Can you guess which book it is? Because there's enough clues in there that you should be able to get it if you know where anteaters are from.
I don't know the names of any Tintin books.
Do you need time to Google? Should we do the Google music? And then you can get all the... Then you can...
I think it's time for some frantic Googling.
Okay.
We're frantically Googling as fast as we can go. We're finding facts we can pretend, although it isn't so, we already know.
I think that this is from the Black Island.
Ooh, why do you think it's from the Black Islands?
Because it looks like it might be something that's on an island, and I'm
Yeah, but the
looking
Black
at
Island's set
frantically
in Scotland.
Googled.
The Black Island is set in the Highlands and Islands of
I
Scotland,
said I don't know them.
where anteaters really don't grow.
Is it the Congo?
No, it's not the Congo. That is one of the books I haven't read because, for obvious reasons, it's incredibly racist, but not really for ethnic reasons, more for sort of like Belgian propaganda reasons.
For sure.
Saying that it's okay to be a colonist because they're all like kids anyway and they need our help. And you're just like, no, they
Isn't
really
there
don't.
a lot of that in Tintin? Given that the Tintin books begin with the first one in 1928 or 29, and he's an explorer, we're in the interwar years when
Yes,
the
it's very
empires were at their
anti-Soviet.
height. And the Belgian Empire, the one that we all forget about, was just as bad as everything we did. The Belgian Congo.
And some.
Well, it was
Wow.
less successful in some respects. This one is one which is, I would argue, is also incredibly stereotypical, but doesn't make out that people of a different race are any more stupid. It just makes out that they don't have the information that Tintin does.
Well, you say that, but as someone who's spent most of the last decade looking like Captain Haddock, I think the whole thing is very racist against people with beards.
Well, yeah, but that's not really a race, is it? That's a.
Are you now denying my race?
I'm denying your race if your race is beard. Blistering barnacles, what will you do?
It's a thing that we're all the more sensitive to as the years go by. You'll know that recently Fatty out of the Bash Street Kids has no longer he's no longer Fatty, he's now Freddy.
Really?
And that sort of sensitivity is something that it's amazing when you look at comics from the past, that it didn't seem to be in their frame of reference. It didn't seem to be on the things to do list to think, would this be offensive to anyone? Because the answer would be, well, they'll never see it. Foreigners, you would do their voice if you were performing. And in comics, you would draw people who were not the people you were immediately surrounded by in a caricatured way, which would very quickly overlap into insulting. I mean, the black characters in Asterix books are the ones I'm very familiar with. They have big lips. And my favourite comic book, The Spirit by Will Eisner, has his little sidekick, who again is quite a step and fetch it character with the big lips and the way he talks as well. You would not do it now, but was it done with malice aforethought and evil intent? I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's because the society was full of that background malice, wasn't it? It's because it wasn't. You know, I would say that as all the racism I was surrounded by growing up in the East End in the 70s. Very little of that was actual hatred. It was just indigenous racism. It's just how people
We're the
behave.
best, and therefore this is the right order of things, is basically what racism was back then, is that, you know, all these people, they seem to be jolly lovely and they're getting along, but we know best.
Yep.
That's what imperialism basically is.
Imperialism was exactly the word I was groping for, Lizzie. Izzy, as usual, you are correct.
It's fine, Duke.
But we're talking there about racism from the point of view of white people in a white country, the Anglo-Saxon English or Belgian in the case of Hergé.
I think most countries think that they're the best. And most people from whatever... So, half my family are Moroccan, they definitely think that they're the best. This is, that everybody does. And therefore, the trouble is, when you have that attitude and also you have an empire and you have power over other people, it's a bad thing because you don't recognise it. Because you don't think, oh, I hate these people. You just think, well, I'm a bit better than them, aren't I?
There's a mild xenophobia, but there's also an intent to simply parody. And there's a them and us, but it's not such a distant them and us because Hergé and the Asterix books do the same because they travel from country and country. They mock the Spanish, they mock the Italians, they mock the French and the Belgian, the Germans. Germans get a lot of it, as well as the people in Africa and India and further afield.
Let's hope the Americans never get the notion that they're the best or that they have power over anyone. God knows where we'll end up.
Well, interesting. I was just watching a TV show, the latest series of Fargo Series 4, which is very interesting in that way. American racism. America internal racism. We had the black characters talking about the Italian characters, who are another of the gangs in this show. If you've not watched it, there's no spoilers here. They, the Italian gang, were previously pitted up against the Irish gang, and the Irish gang were previously pitted up against the Jewish gang, going through the generations of the gangs in this particular town. And there's a lot of stereotyping other groups of people. They talk about the Dutch, they talk about the Germans, they talk about everybody who's not them. But one big thing they make a point of is that they're all Americans. And that's a very interesting sort of caricaturing. I mean, in their case, it's also offensive because they try and kill these people or they'll be killed by them. But sometimes it's just a thing that you do. So you're not even saying that, you were saying we're all Americans, but you find the difference between them and make something out of that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's interesting. I was listening to a completely different sort of podcast this morning, which is about it was about people of colour passing. It was about the concept. That was a BBC documentary, and in there they said something very similar. And what was it they said? They said that the concept of race had been invented not to define the differences between people, but to create differences between people. And I thought that's really interesting, because the whole notion of race as distinct from nationality is a quite modern invention. Again, it's in line with that sort of taxonomy stuff that we were talking about earlier, that the Grimms were going around and doing. These were all ways of boistering this sort of nationalism.
I've got to say, although Doug is no longer the mind reader amongst them, I'm channeling voices. I'm hearing the voice of Hergé. He's saying, yes, that's exactly what I was going for. I was hoping that whenever anybody discussed Tintin, this is where the conversation would go.
And I mean, I think this is a really bad stereotypical image of an anteater. I think this is not how anteaters really are.
It's not very spiny for a start, is it?
Well, that's a porcupine, not an anteater that's spiny.
They got mind blown. They're different things. I thought a spiny anteater was a description.
Yeah, no, I don't think all anteaters have. I mean, I think porcupines do. Don't porcupines eat vegetation? Isn't that why they're? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what some American.
Surely they eat pork.
No, they eat fruit and things. They talk.
Pine?
There's a really cute talking porcupine. They go. Well, it eats
okay,
potato.
one of us has clearly just lost the plot, and I think that's always the sign of a good time to wind up. I cannot quite fathom how we got to the territory that we got into, but by God, I'm glad we did. Izzy shared with us Tintin by Hergé. I don't need to tell you
book.
Where to find. Oh, what
was it?
Forgive me. Which Hergé Tintin was it?
Well, it's an anteater, so obviously it's a South American one, and the South American one, obviously, that everybody knows, with the slightly racial stuff about, is the Appearance of the Sun, which is 1948, which is a really good, fun one. And I will ruin it for you, Eclipse. So, it contains stuff about the Mayans.
Izzy has shared with us, and spoiler alert, ruined Prisoners of the Sun by Hergé from 1948, starring Tintin, Snowy, the Thompson twins et al. And Doug shared with us Fables by Bill Willingham and various artists. DC Vertigo, available in trade paperback. Also, if you're lucky, from Waterstones, and you'll find them online. Izzy and Doug, I must thank you so much for joining us here. Anything you'd like to say to the listeners at home before we go? Izzy?
Give Tintin a chance. It is of its time, but particularly Explorers of the Moon. It's amazing. He wrote about going to the moon before anybody had been to the moon and got so much right. So read those. They're amazing. So I do like Tintin.
And Izzy, where will we find you on the socials?
At Izzy Lawrence, so at ISZI_LAWRENCE, but just Google ISZI, Izzy.com, you'll find me.
Doug, anything to say before we close?
I would just like to say, please, now that as soon as you feel it's safe enough, please go out and support live comedy. We desperately need your bum on a seat. And, obviously if you pass a comic shop and buy something on the way, that would be even better. And where do we find you on the socials, Doug? I'm just coming out of social hibernation now after quite a long pause, but you can find me on Twitter on Doug, DOUG _Segal, SEGAL.
That was Comic Cuts. If you've enjoyed it or have any questions, you can find us on our social media. I personally am on @KevFComicArtist and at kevfcomicartist.com. Please click subscribe to be sure of hearing every episode when it comes out. Thanks again to Iszi Lawrence and to Doug Segal and to you for listening. I've been Kev F, and this has been Comic Cuts, the panel show.